All right, welcome back, guys, to another episode of Tazz Knows. We got Nene MMA, and of course, myself, Tazz, and we have a very special guest with us this week. He is a wrestling legend, wrestling royalty. He is a true warrior, Mr. Chavo Guerrero Jr.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you for joining us, Chavo. It's a real honor and a real pleasure to have you on the podcast. How's it going?
Everything's great, man. Everything's really good. Just enjoying Southern California weather. Everything's going good.
I heard it's so much better than Chicago. We get
No, it usually is. We got some June gloom going on right now, so it's kind of, it's gloomy in the morning, but then usually it burns off in the afternoon. So right now it's beautiful outside.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chavo. Again, I want to get straight to the point because I'm a big you go in there, hit first, hit last type of person. Okay. So one of the things that I noticed about you when we first joined you in actually your first seminar here in
my
Chicago.
good looks. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. But we went to the seminar and then you taught some of the professional wrestlers here in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some teachings and lessons that you were showing about professional wrestling, and you were comparing that to MMA.
Absolutely.
And as we've talked about in previous conversations, MMA is a way of life, right? It's a lifestyle. It's how we live our life every day to make sure that we're the best versions of ourselves. And I can go about how I use MMA to live my life, but I wanted to know how you use professional wrestling in your everyday life.
No different than professional wrestling. I even got a book here from my boy Henry Gracie right now. The 32 Principles of Jiu-Jitsu and harnessing the power of Jiu-Jitsu to succeed in business, relationships, and life.
Nice.
So it's really no different, they're all combat sports. All combat sports have a lot in common. We're talking about pivoting and just so much in common, changing levels, and that's pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is right there. Everybody thinks, oh, pro wrestling, it's choreographed, something like that. Like, no, that's not how we pro wrestle. We don't choreograph it. We just go out there and do it. And half the time we're three-quarter shooting in there. A lot of times we really are. So all the people that are listening, three-quarter shoot is almost full. I remember my dad one time. My dad, Chavo Guerrero Classic was, in his day, was a damn good wrestler, one of the best in the world. And in fact, he wrestled for the back day. There was three big organizations. So he wrestled for the NWA Championship, and that was Terry Funk. This is all in the same year. Then he wrestled Superstar Billy Graham for the WWF World Championship, and he wrestled Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA World Championship and won an hour time limit draw to each one. Didn't lose to any of them. So he was rocking back in the day. Anyways, he had stepped away from the sport for many years, maybe 15 years. He'd gone to Japan, so many different times, and that shoot style, that strong style over there was like his favorite. He was really good at that. Well, since he had stepped away, then WWE had brought him in as my manager when this is about 2004, when we kind of turned on Eddie type thing. Well, before you know it, they brought him in for one night, but they liked it so much that they kept him on. Before you know it, it was me and him versus Eddie and Kurt Angle in the main event of SmackDown on TV. And he was kind of like, whoa. So we got in there just, we were just doing our things. And I'm thinking it's my dad from 15 years ago. So he's in there, like his head's spinning because we're just going. And he comes out, he's like, son, he's like, gosh, you guys, you guys, you're three-quarter shooting in there. I go, no, we're working. He goes, He's like, I'm shooting in on Kurt Angle, and it was slow. He pulled right away. And I'm saying, well, yeah, if you don't get it, we don't give it to you. And he's like, you guys are doing what we were doing in Japan. I mean, you're hitting hard. So that's just how we wrestled. We pro wrestled, and not everybody can do that. But at that high level, especially at the time that we were doing that, you had to be able to really do that to, just to succeed. Because there's a lot of times that, people would, like nowadays when they'll call, 100% of the match in the back. Well, in WWE, a lot of times they're changing it on the fly. I was in the ring sometimes when we'd have 2 minutes, then we get in there, they tell us we have 9 minutes, and then it switches down to 7 minutes. or Vince McMahon would change the finish. At one time I was wrestling CM Punk. He was supposed to win. He was supposed to go over, and in the ring, I get the referee telling me, Chavo, you're winning now. I'm like, all right. So you got to be able to call it on the fly and be able just to adapt to the situation. If your opponent's hurt and you still got 8 more minutes out there, you got to be able to adapt to it. If you've already called everything in the back, then you can't be able to, you can't do that. You're going to be stuck. So we were big on catch as catch can, action and reaction to what our wrestling really is. So that's very much, we're all students of all of MMA. We're kind of the Guerreros are kind of MMA before MMA was cool. We really studied jiu-jitsu, really studied striking. We studied judo. We studied wrestling. We had to know all of that so that when we were in the ring, we could kind of go with anybody. We go to Japan and wrestle with their guys. Next thing you know, they're putting us in with Sakuraba or my dad will see Fujiwara. And Fujiwara, if you guys know, Fujiwara was a huge, crazy shooter, was a gotch student and all that kind of stuff. And he could take you at any time he wanted to. So if you couldn't hold your own, especially over there, they'd eat you up. So we really learned to be able to protect ourselves with anybody.
So would you say that your mindset was more that of granted, like you guys understood what the finish was going to be and it could change at any minute, but did you go in there with like the mindset of, oh, all right, this is competition. This is real.
Absolutely. It was always competition in there. And you just never knew. We weren't big guys.
Mm-hmm.
We're all pretty small for wrestling at that level. And all those guys are 6'8", 300 pounds. You never know when you were going to, when it was going to turn real fast,
Yeah.
Some, 6'8" guy was not going to want to lose to you and you're going to have to make him lose. So we just were prepared at all times, and we never wanted it to get to that point because that's not what we do in professional wrestling. But sometimes it got to that point, and you had to be able to hold your own, and that's something we were all taught, for sure.
There was one thing that you said in the seminar. Again, the way that I see it is that you can definitely relate to us MMA fighters, mixed martial artists.
Absolutely.
It's one of the questions that I asked you, and I feel like I put you on the spot a little bit, but I was like, how are you different from everybody else, right? And one of the questions, well, that question itself, you said that you're adaptable, right? And that's one of the major key things in MMA. You have to be adaptable towards going against someone that's 250 pounds, against someone that's only 100 pounds.
You got some people with great ground game, great stand up, or is a great submission fighter. Then you're going to have to adapt to all that, or you're going to get eaten up, or at least be able to defend all of that. Because you're not always able to impose your will on people, and some people you'll be able to just get up there and eat them up. And there's a lot of people that they're able to eat you up. But if you know enough to not get caught in certain situations, you can survive and hopefully catch them. That's the name of the game, keeping yourself in there, So we, in professional wrestling, we were taught, the Guerrero family was taught to be single wrestlers, be tag team wrestlers, be managers, be heels, be baby faces, wrestle Japanese style, wrestle European style, wrestle American style, wrestle Mexican style. That way we could wrestle anywhere. If you just know American wrestling, well, then you can only wrestle in America. You go to Mexico where they're tying up on the other side, everything's done on the right side, you're lost. So when you're able to adapt, then you can work with anybody. And that's pretty much why I think the Guerreros have had a very long career in professional wrestling, because our adaptability.
That's something that fascinates me with mindset so much is longevity, because that's what I'm looking for myself. I'm looking for that for my students here at the gym. But in this day and age, I'm an old soul. I've been watching professional wrestling for 25 years now. I've been training MMA for 14, and I see the shifts in styles in wrestling. I see the shifts in the style of MMA, and I just also, unfortunately, sometimes a shift in mindsets. And I think in our world of MMA, we see all like the celebrity boxings and the quick, I want to make a quick buck and then get out of here. When back then you saw the fighters, they wanted to really see who was the best in the world. So I see a change in mindset when it comes to longevity, and it's just what has kept you going for as long as you've been going? Because you're still going, you're still.
Right. Well, you remember the start of, let's say UFC,
Mhm.
um, MMA in a sense, but MMA was around before UFC, but let's say the UFC, it was, true disciplines. It was karate versus judo or
Yeah.
wrestling versus boxing. So once people learned that, Brazilian jiu-jitsu was kind of beating everybody, then people learned to kind of be a hybrid and kind of learn everything. So now you look at these fighters today, they know everything.
Yeah.
They may have one straight discipline, that's their thing, but if they're wrestlers, they know how to defend jiu-jitsu. They know how to strike, they know how to Muay Thai kick. Everybody knows how to do everything. And wrestling used to be like that as well. Wrestling used to be like the American style, Japanese style,
Mhm.
but now you see such a hybrid. You see people that are, 100 and, 250 pounds doing head scissors.
Yeah.
In the day, you never saw that. That was only in Mexico, or backflips or the aerial assault. Now everybody's kind of doing that. I see guys like Brian Cage, that's a 265-pound guy doing stuff that a cruiserweight does. You know, I don't always agree with it, but they can do it, and it's everybody's a hybrid of those kind of those styles now. So it's not just MMA, it's professional wrestling as well. But what's kept us going is like that adaptability and being able to learn every style and and staying on top of our injuries. That's another big one. If you're able to harness or keep your injuries at bay. We get hurt all the time. I always tell people I was hurt for 20 straight years, but I
What?
was always so I was always hurt, always hurt. You just never knew. And something that like Ronda Rousey said, you're training to be the best on your worst day. You're never 100%. I'm rarely, when I was wrestling, 100%. I was always having something wrong with me. And if you're going into a big fight that you've been training hard, a hard camp for 6 to 8 weeks, you're hurt.
Yeah.
You got hurt. So you're training to be the best on your worst day. And that's what we were doing in pro wrestling as well. We were always trying to be the best, even when we had an off night. I remember one night I wrestled, I think Shannon Moore. And God, it was at the end of a long tour, like a 4 or 5, 6 day tour. And God, I was I just didn't had no oomph. I had nothing in there. And I got in the match, and I thought I was so slow and so lethargic, and I felt crappy. When I came in the back, Fit Finley, one of the best of all time, Finn was like, Chavo, he's from Ireland, so he's got that Irish accent, but it's Chavo. Excellent match. You really slowed down. And I was like, oh yeah, right. I thought he was giving me shit. He's like, no, really. And I was like, really? He's like, yes. He's like, finally, you're slowing down. You're not going 100 miles an hour. And I went, oh, I've been going too fast a lot of times. And that's what happens. You have to pick your spots. MMA, there's no difference. You can't go 100 miles an hour the whole time and be able to, go into and like UFC into like a third round. You can't do it. It's impossible. I don't care what kind of shape you're in. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So
One of the
you have
things that I've
to
noticed
choose
about,
spots.
oh yeah, professional wrestling is definitely a humbling sport because although I've trained for 9 years, he's trained for 14 years. Whenever I do anything, I feel humbled. I feel like I don't know anything, right? So I would like to know, I guess from your experience, what has been the most humbling experience from many humbling experience that you can think of?
Well, once you think you know it all, you know nothing. That's when you know nothing. You're always learning. I'm always learning. And I'm always not learning just from a Ric Flair. I'm learning from people that are just in the business. Or if I'm training an actor or an actress for a movie about wrestling, I'm learning from them. It's really weird. I'm always constantly learning, constantly. So I think that's something that you keep in mind, that you know, you're you're always God, you're only as good as your next match. Not your last match, your next match, because as soon as you wrestle and you think, God, what a great match, and you wake up in the morning, all those medals you had from the night before, they're gone. You got to do it again. You got to do it again. You can't sit there and go and have a stinker and they go, but last night was really good. Doesn't matter. That's gone. It's gone. You have to do it every single night. So, humbling experiences are, there's times in there when you think you're the ring general in there and the ring leader, and all of a sudden this guy that's been in 2 years and all of a sudden he leads you on something. You're like, you learned.
Mhm.
You learn something. You learn from, the weirdest places. I was constantly learning. And it wasn't just in the ring, it's everything that had to do with being in there, production, performance, all that. 'Cause I don't care what kind of sport it is. Once you charge $1 for a sport, it's now entertainment. It's not a sport anymore. Because if let's look at the UFC. If no one's watching UFC, there is no more UFC. It's gone. It almost folded a few different times. But once you look at guys like Conor McGregor, I use this sometimes. Conor McGregor is an excellent fighter. Is he the best? Well, we've shown that he's not the best out there anymore, but he's getting paid the most. And why? It's because he's putting asses in the seats.
Yeah.
That's why. And it's all about, it's about performance. So constantly, I don't care if it's a shoot, if it's pro football or whatever, it's performing. You got to keep people tuned in and watching. I watched for instance, the first NBA game on this championship round, the Celtics versus for the Mavericks. The first game was boring because it was a blowout. I just stopped watching. I was out, I walked off and was doing my own thing. Last night I watched again and they were back and forth and it was awesome. So it kept me intrigued, the performance, So being in the ring or in the octagon or on the mat, it's not just your skill or whatever your jujitsu or wrestling or whatever discipline you're doing. It's that performance, that ring awareness, the production awareness. You just got you're not just fighting against your opponent. You're fighting against yourself. You're fighting against the time. You got to know the time. There's so much more to it in there. And it's not just pro wrestling with anything. You got to know. You got to know when to turn it up and when to push on the brakes a little bit. But that goes with knowing your time. You need your time limit. Unless you're like on a no time limit match, which really don't happen anymore. What's going on. You got to know when shoot. I'm behind on the scorecard. I'm behind. I got to turn it up. If I want to win this, I got 30 seconds to win this. Let's go. Right? You saw the UFC the other day. You saw the UFC with the Gaethje and the who did Gaethje fight last time? Holloway.
Yeah. And
right? They went down and Holloway was losing. He just let's bang, just knocked him out with 2 seconds left in the match. I mean, I thought Gaethje was winning that fight.
Yeah.
Personally, so knocked him out. He knew his time. He went and Gaethje took the bite and they went. But more power to them. They put on a show, and someone got to lose. That was awesome. I loved it. 2-second knockout with 2 seconds left. 2 seconds left. It was crazy, right? If Gaethje would have just stalled for the last 30 seconds, he may have won or whatever, but they're not going to remember that as a fight of the night.
Yeah. We've had Dan Severn on. He's been to our gym a handful of times, and he kind of touched upon the same thing. He's what I didn't know is that he was a professional wrestler before he got into the UFC. I thought it was the other way around. And he talked about the performance side of things.
Ken Shamrock.
Yeah.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah, he talked about Ken too. Because he walked out with his NWA belt for the UFC 5 tournament that he won, and he understood really early on about the business side of things because he wasn't exclusive to UFC, he wasn't exclusive to WWF once he got there, but he understood like he had to be because you've met him, you were on his podcast. He's a super calm dude, super gentleman-like, but when he was in that cage, he was a whole different beast, and
Killer.
About the mindset of only he says out of the 100-something fights that he's had, he's only done 2 true training camps. And the first main training camp he did was for UFC 5 because he knew he had to be that beast. So, he told his family, I gotta step away for a little bit. He did 32 days to get into that mindset, but he said outside of that training was the performance aspect of it, and that's what gave him the longevity that he's had as well, because he's still going too.
He's so awesome. I love Dan. He's a great guy. The first time I met him, I was doing a signing in El Paso. I was working for WCW. He was doing a signing in somewhere in the other part of El Paso with WWE or WWF at the time.
Mm.
He came to my signing to say hello. And I was like, oh, what a cool guy, man. Just a
Yeah. Yep.
gentleman, just a nice guy. And he doesn't really, you talk to him, he doesn't seem like this killer, right? Like Don Fry's the same way. When I met Don the first time, I thought he was just this big guy with a mustache, this fireman. And then I went back to some of his fights, and like, oh my God, this guy is like the toughest dude in the world, But I love those guys. Those guys are they don't when you're tough like that, you don't have to show you're tough. People know you're tough, I mean, the guy at the bar was telling you how tough he is. That's the first guy I'm punching. That's the first guy I'm punching, you know what I mean? But the guy at the end of the bar, the guy who's flashing his Rolex and showing how much money he's got, he doesn't have that much money. The guy at the end of the bar, the Tommy Bahamas, is all quiet. That guy's got the money. The most beautiful girl is not telling you how beautiful she is. You just know the toughest guys, and I know some of the toughest dudes in the world. I'm sure you do as well. They don't have to tell you they're tough. You just know,
Yeah.
I think
right?
one of the things that I admire the most about you is that you're very humble. That
Thank you.
when we first approached you was actually you came to our table when we were with Mr. Kate at the
Mhm. Yeah.
WWE convention in
Mhm.
Philly, right?
Right.
So you came to the table, you spoke to her, and then me willingly just say like, "Hey, Chavo, nice to
Totally. Right. Yeah.
no, I mean, could be anyone else. You could have been like, okay, who's this girl? Why is she talking to me, little short Mexican, But you didn't. You said, okay, nice to meet you, which was very, very humbling to see. You won't get a lot of that nowadays, especially
Right.
from you being a legend, you doing what you did, and still continuing the legacy. You're very humble.
Thank you. One thing is you just don't believe the hype. People say everything about you, but you, you never know who's going to be your boss next week. So you never want to burn your bridges, and I've done it before in the past, and you learn from it. And but at the same time, you build those relationships, and um, people say it's not what you know, it's who you know, but that's not true. It's who you have good relationships with, because you never know. And that's not why I did it, but at the same time, you do it because I see people in the business that I respect, that you're all family to me. If we're all wrestlers or we're all in this type of business, we're all the same. We're all part of this family. Just because someone's got more experience than you doesn't make them better than you. So I'm definitely a believer that we're here to serve people, and I follow Jesus Christ, and we're here to serve people. That's what I believe. So when I see people, I want to, I want to be your friend. I want to talk to you. I'd rather buy you a beer than punch you in the face. I always say that. We'll punch you in the face if I have to.
Isn't it funny? Because okay, so I was reading about you, right, in your history when it comes to wrestling, with Eddie specifically, Eddie Guerrero, right?
Eddie
Um,
was a very humble guy as well. Very humble.
yeah, oh man, you guys were great heels, douchebags, but in a good way, respectfully.
We were. That was our favorite part. We love being her heels. That was the best. Being a baby face is that being a good guy. That's too easy. I love being a heel. I'd rather have the whole place chanting Chavo sucks than go Chavo. Just something about it.
That's hilarious. So I wanted to bring it up because I thought it's really interesting how you connected with Eddie in the ring.
Mhm.
And you guys are family, but not every family member gets along with each other, let alone in a business. Because now you're mixing personal and business. And that's one thing that we always talk about, like how he runs the gym, but he's also a best friend. He's also a dog dad, and he's also all these things, but it's hard to mix that personal and business relationship. So I wanted to know from your perspective, how was that when, even though Eddie was one of your big the person that you were ride and die for, and then how's that relationship? How were you guys able to balance that out?
Eddie and I we were brothers. We grew up. Well, technically, we're uncle nephew. He's my dad's youngest brother. So my dad was 18 when he was born. When I was born, my dad was 21. So we were on 3 years apart. I always say that it's true. Eddie was my grandfather's, late mistake and I was my dad's early mistake. So both were not supposed to be here. But we grew up as brothers, you know, he was the big brother I never had, and I was the little brother he never had. And um the love, we had so much love for each other and so much respect for each other. And we just knew we had each other's backs at all time. We could be fighting with each other, you know, in each other's faces. You know, we were still like brothers, we are still family. There was times that we were at each other's you know, each other's throats. But at the same time, we were in the ring, we were like, shit's on. It's me and you, let's go. Because you never knew what was going to happen. There was a lot of times I'd be in the ring and they would just look at me like, look, excuse my language, but he would say, I could just tell. And he used to say it like, fuck these motherfuckers. Let's go. we'd have to turn it on and go and go. I'm like, all right, let's go.
That's funny.
I didn't ask, well, what happened? I'm like, if turn it on, turn it on, and vice versa. If I told him, hey, let's go time. There was no questions asked. Okay. So you know, I don't know that question, you know, it's like you can treat your family like shit, but nobody else can. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
so there's times that he and I would be at each other's throats, but we knew that the love was there. We always that we had each other's backs no matter what. And in the ring it showed, you know. I mean, it was just weird. We just knew what each other were thinking at all times in there. I remember one time it was not planned, it just happened. Like, and usually it never happened. Usually when like we were wrestling like Edge and maybe Rey Mysterio, Edge and somebody, and he was choking Edge on the ropes of away from us. So this is our corner, and that's their corner, opposite corners. Well, he was kind of choking Edge on the ropes far away from us. And usually he would take Edge and take the opponent and bring him to my side, tag me in, and I'd do something. Well, this time he was choking Edge. He literally let go of Edge, did like a roll, a little maroma, we call it a roll, and tagged me. I did a little roll into the ring and then grabbed Edge right and went back to choking Edge right on the ropes. And Edge looks up, it's like, when did you get here? He had no he just thought Eddie just went away for a second, and next thing you know, he looks up and I'm choking him now. He was like, when did you guys tag? When did that happen? He had no clue. It was that fast. We never done that before. It just happened. He rolled out, tagged me, I rolled in and started right back to where he was at. It was just like yeah, I could tell you so many more instances like that. And we just knew, like, we were like so cohesive as a team. And I mean, one time Vince McMahon told us, he goes, it was a huge compliment. And he doesn't give a lot of compliments, but he said, he goes, "Guy, you guys are the best tag team." Now I'm going to throw out old school names out here, but if you know wrestling, these guys are amazing. He goes, "You're the best. You two are the best tag team I've seen since Pat Patterson and Ray Stevens." Wow. Now those guys are from like the the 60s, the 70s, but they were such a great tag team, like very very well known. And I was like, wow, that's a huge compliment. And he's seen so many different tags, but he just knew that we could do everything. I mean, we were good bad guys, we were good guys, we were good on the mic, we were good in the ring. Like, he just knew that it was just such I don't know, he saw it. It's very hard to explain. It's just there's something there that I've never had with anybody else. This understanding, like this exact same mindset.
Yeah, one of the first matches that I showed her, she got into wrestling a little bit late in life. But one of the first matches that I showed was
As long as you get into it, I don't care how late it is, as long as
was your match with Eddie at the Royal Rumble 2004, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the first things that she noticed was like the emotion, like you can feel the emotion of that match through the screen, you know. And she didn't see like the build up or anything. We just literally watched the match, but she could feel the emotion. And that's something that I always loved about you guys. You know, both of you helped me because I'm a small guy. You know, when I wrestled in high school, I was 105 pounds, you know, so I was real small. And for a big chunk of my life, I wanted to be a pro wrestler, but I never thought I could make it because I was small. And I'm looking at these giants on the screen, you know, and then I see you and Eddie do your thing, and you guys just control the crowd's emotions. You made us laugh, you made us cry, you made us hate you made us love you guys, you know. And it was just that passion that you guys have for wrestling. It transcends the camera. It goes right through the camera into all of us, you know. And that was just so amazing to me. And that obviously I switched courses and I'm in MMA now, But
Right.
that's what I try to do for my classes now that I'm teaching. I'm trying to show people that it's not just you can do moves, you can do the techniques, but that's not enough. Like you gotta feel it, you gotta be in it, you gotta believe in it
You got to
100%.
believe in it. That's what you said. You got to believe in it. And so when Eddie and I are in the ring, especially that match, I remember Fisk man told us, he goes, I don't want to see a bunch of flying out there. You guys, and we were thinking, ain't no way we're flying out there. This is, he didn't even have to say it. We knew. And it was real, we believed it. It was like, we're looking at each other like shit's on, like, like screw you, screw like it's real. We
Yeah,
believed it. And if you don't believe it, the fans aren't going to believe it.
yeah.
So what you see a lot of times in wrestling nowadays is sometimes just a lot of bad acting in there. These people just they're doing a character that they don't believe in, that
Wow.
they're playing this role. They got to believe. Like when I was a heel, no joke, like I wanted to fight everybody in the arena. Everybody, like everybody. I was in the ring. I was hoping somebody came over the rail. Like I was, come on, like please make my day. Like I was looking, like come on. I couldn't wait. I remember one time we were in Italy, and we hadn't been to Italy in a long time, so we went back there, and the places they're going crazy. Before I got in the ring, before I started the match, I was walking on the ring. I almost blew up. I was like, because I wanted to fight everybody in there. They had me so worked up. I was like believing it so much. And I remember like my dad saying when he would be working, sometimes somebody's working his leg, and he's like, man, I feel that pain. I really believe the pain. And as a kid, I didn't realize it. And now when I get in the ring, I believe it too. When someone would be working my leg in the ring and it's maybe just work, I believe it so much that when I'd go in the back, I'd still be limping. And people are like, oh, did you get hurt? I'm like, no. They're like, you're limping. It's like you believe, you have to believe it, because if you don't, the fans aren't going to believe it. So when me and Eddie, we were our time there was to hate each other. We had to hate each other right there. Like I turned on him. That was a storyline. We stopped riding together. I mean, it was crazy. We had to. My dad was in my corner, and he had to know that we had to believe it. That tension was there. We would have gone, fist to fist with it, but it was there. Like, bring it. I'm bringing it too. So I don't know. It's just something that we were both born with, that and I still believe it. There's still, I'll be in a bar, I'll be having a drink, and you get into an altercation, and I'll look right dead in that guy's eyes and be like it's on. Like I can tell if it's on or not just by his eyes. As soon as he looks away, I go, oh, he's mine. I'm looking right through him. Like you got to know that, okay, we're doing this. We're doing this. I'm not, let's go.
Mike
But then
Tyson
everyone,
would say the same thing with the eye contact. As soon as his opponent looked away, he knew he already beat him.
he looks away, I got him. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, there's times you're in bar and the guy's looking at you going, ah, come on. I'm like, oh shit. I'll do it. All right, let's do this shit.
Slide on it.
But Mike's the same way. Like Mike, I know Mike well. I done a couple, like a commercial with him and stuff, and I got a really cool picture of me and Mike, a few different pictures, but we're hugging, and then the last picture, he's turned away and looking at the camera as we're hugging. He's like this. Man, I'm not scared of anybody. There's nobody I'm scared of out there. Mike, there's something about Mike. Like it's like there's inside, I could see those eyes. It was like shark eyes. Like there's like inside that, like there was like a just a darkness, man. It was crazy. Like I didn't if I fought Mike, I knew that it'd be to the death. You could feel it. You could feel it. Like he wasn't just gonna punch you, okay, let go, or no, like it's yeah, I don't want to go there. I'm good.
Stay on his good side.
Yeah, I'm good. I love Mike. He's an awesome guy. But you just know, you've seen him when he flips on somebody, and somebody in an interview, you ask him the wrong question or challenges him a little bit, and he changed right away. He's like, oh yeah, I thought you were a nice guy, but you're a piece of shit, with his lisp, and Mike's he's a different character, man. But you like back to it, you got to believe it, and if you don't believe it, they're gonna see right through you.
So now that you're like in the realm of also teaching actors how to wrestle. You know, obviously actors are doing it for a role, you know, and then I kind of compared it, and that's where I wanted to take this a little bit. Because at our gym, we have people that compete in grappling tournaments. We have people that do MMA fights, and I coach all of them. But I also teach the classes where I have people that are not interested in ever competing. You know, they want to do it for self-defense, workout, you know, so obviously the passions are different, you know. So when you're dealing with teaching someone that wants to pro wrestle to become a professional wrestler versus teaching an actor, like how's your approach with that? Like, because obviously the passion's going to be very different.
It's definitely different. Well, teaching an actor, the way we treat a pro wrestler is you got to beat them up a little bit. You got to make them ring hard because that's what's going to happen. I'm not beat them up, I mean, but you got to make them bump. You got to show that this is what it is. You mean you can't be that bad magician in there that you can see through all his tricks. You have to be really good, and there's no way around it.
Mhm.
An actor is different. An actor, I can't beat them up. I have the studios, investing a lot of money in these guys. They have millions of dollars in that ring, and they're there for me to train them to look like pro wrestlers in a wrestling scene, but not be pro wrestlers. Two different things. So I had almost have to get them to love pro wrestling and love to come to practice every day. And eventually you'll get them to the pain part eventually, but you got to ease into, depends how much time I have with them or how much, you know, studio gives me. And sometimes they give me 3 months, and sometimes I got 2 days. So it just depends. Oh no, for sure. Like I said, I met one time they cast the guy the night before, and then we were shooting the next day. So in the morning I had to train him for this scene and make him look like a wrestler in this scene, like a 30-45 second scene, and we're shooting it in 5 hours. So I was like, oh God, okay, let's do this. I'll get you there. Just, you got to trust on me. It's super accelerated class, but it's different. I'm like I say, I'm training them to look like pro wrestlers, and a lot of them have done theater before and stuff like that. So they're gonna get it. I kind of relate what we do to that in a sense, just more of a physicalness. But eventually, I get them to where I got a lot of little tricks to make them look like they're doing pro wrestling stuff without having to do the big bumps and all that kind of stuff. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody that wants to do all that. Like, all right, well, let's go. But for the most part, I can't beat them up like that, because they got to film these scenes over and over and over again. It's not one take. They're filming this scene, 20 times, and then we're going to lunch and come back and film them another 4 times. So yeah, it's like, that 3 bumps in a match quickly turns into 30 to 60 bumps in the day over a 6-hour period. So, it's totally different that how to train an actor and a pro wrestler. It's all wrestling, but it's not. It's different. And training pro wrestling is different too. I can train. You have to. You're being a teacher, back to the adaptation and just kind of conforming and like what I always call it, like being Bruce Lee, being like water, becoming that cup, or you put it in a pond, you become flat like the table or whatever it is. You're like water, and as a teacher, same thing. You can't teach every student exactly the same. You have to teach them all different because they're all different learners. So you have to quickly decipher and find out what this person is going to react to, and you have to adapt to their learning style. They can't just adapt to my teaching style. A good teacher is going to be able to teach anybody, but the reason he can or she can is because they're able to adapt to their students. So if my student a pro wrestler that's got, is an ex-pro football player, different story. Or is my student an actress on Glow that's never even played a sport? It's you got to get them to the same spot. It's just different ways to do it. And as a teacher, you got to know that as well.
Yeah. That was the biggest learning curve. Like I ended up as an instructor and as a coach unexpectedly. Like I wanted to compete, I wanted to fight, I had one fight, and then things started shifting. My coach got hurt. Like I said, I was really small, so when I fought at 125 pounds, and I didn't have to cut weight. I was eating on my way to the weigh-ins to try to make the weight limit, so fight didn't go my way. I lost on the cards, and my coach told me, he's like, all right, we're gonna both.
You didn't lose, you learned.
I learned. I
You
learned a
learned.
lot from that
There's,
one. I
there's no
definitely did.
losing, just learning. Winning or learning. Continue, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. And my coach told me, like, we're gonna bulk you up a little bit. He's like, so we're gonna cut back on your cardio. The way that you're gonna keep learning is you're gonna help me teach my classes now. So I started off kind of like as his assistant, and then as he got comfortable with me taking care of his classes, he would call me like, hey, can you cover the whole class for me? I'm not gonna make it tonight. And that just kind of slowly turned into me becoming an instructor. But I went like, all right, I got one day out of the week. I gotta show everybody that I'm worthy of being their instructor. So I give them a real tough class, and then they'd be all dead and tired. And then they'd tell my coach, like, hey, we really liked his class. And so he started giving me a little bit more. And I started running that hard class all the time. And then within like 2 weeks, we got no one left because they're all hurt or sore or tired.
Yeah.
So that's when I had to learn to pull back a little bit, because one
Yeah,
day a week may be hard, but then every day is.
can't teach everybody the same. I mean, there's different things. If they're, they're in a camp and they got to get their cardio up for that different story, but you got to keep them going. Can't get them hurt in that camp. And there's just teaching. You become a better student when you become a teacher, because then you learn how to teach people, which means you learn how to be taught.
Absolutely. That's
I was just like,
I saw
whoa.
Nene's face go, oh.
The wheels are turning.
Yeah, there's some Miyagi shit going around right now.
My students aren't going to be happy with this, because I'm going to start making everyone teach some classes these days.
True, though. Yeah, right.
No, but it's totally true. I feel like I started learning the sport so much better once I started. You just have to understand the techniques on a deeper level once you have to start teaching it to people. And like you said, everyone learns differently. So you got to find maybe 100 different ways to explain the same thing to 100 different people, and that just forces you to really understand what you're doing that much more.
You have to, become more of a student of the game. When you become a teacher, you become a more of a student. Like you really start understanding what you're teaching. You start instead of being taught, it's like a deeper sense of it. I became a better wrestler when I started training actors in Hollywood, because I couldn't teach them like a pro wrestler. I had to really break it down, and stuff that I just have known my entire life. I had to break things down step by step. Well, I had never really done that. No one ever taught me how to do a lot of these moves. I just did it. So it was like, how do I do this move? Like I was kind of really breaking things down, to the fractions, like knowing everything. And every time I get on a set and start training new actors, I learn even more. You just get so immersed in it. It's like all these different equations and like philosophies that start getting unlocked in your brain. And once you unlock one, it's like a portal. And then all of a sudden you start learning a different thing that you would never thought of before, because you learn this way. And then you learn this, and there's a different like wormholes all in your brain. You start learning all of this stuff. And I just believe that knowledge festers more knowledge.
Yeah.
Once you start learning stuff, it's much more things like, for instance, like math. I never really cared about math. I was in high school. I was going to be a pro wrestler. I used a calculator. Once I started really learning how the universe works and how everything is math, everything we're doing in wrestling is all math, all those half steps, everything, it's all math. I started learning, like, okay, cool. And then I started really kind of thinking about the universe and how the universe works and physics and all this different stuff. And it's all mathematical equations. So I'm almost looking like the Matrix, all these, like when I get in especially get in a wrestling ring, I start, it's like all these numbers and formulas are going around in my head. It's really weird. Like it's
really weird.
Weird. But the rest of the world, I start looking at the rest of the world like that too, though. I never used to do that before, but now it's kind of like, I think I mentioned to you one time and I was never that guy, but I turned to the guy, and I don't know where that happened. Like one time my son, before the iPhones were all, I think I mentioned this, before iPhones were all waterproof and all that kind of stuff, You know, you went to the pool with an iPhone, it was done. So my youngest son, you know, he's 21 now. He's probably 10. He you know, he's all crying. What's wrong? He's like, "Oh, I went in the pool and I had my phone in me and this doesn't work now." You know, he just got it, you know, he just got it as a present. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna show you that your dad is smarter than an iPhone. And he's like, "What do you mean?" I go, "I've never done this before, but I'm gonna figure it out." You know, went on YouTube, different things of this, ordered different things on eBay, and took his iPhone apart. There was like 400 pieces around me, and I'm like, you know, I'm like sitting there like, oh, square root, like triangle, like all this some stuff. People are trying to talk to me like, "Oh, leave me alone, leave me alone." And I did it for like, you know, like 3 or 4 hours, and finally got everything, dried it all out, put everything back together, put it up, and turned it on, and it worked. And he was like, "How the heck did you do that?" I don't know. I just did it. But it's just, it's like these little things that, like I just say, knowledge is power, big time. You know, you've heard that your entire life. Knowledge is power. You're like, yeah, whatever. But it's so true. Like I'm a big history buff. I love history because if you know, if you don't know history, we're destined to repeat it. So you learn from all of these mistakes and you learn from stuff, and you're going to make your own mistakes, and that's really how you learn. But hopefully you'll learn enough to not make the same mistakes somebody else made.
There's so many things my coaches used to tell me that I was like, you know, you're just being, you know, cocky, you're trying to sound cool. And here I am all these years later saying the same thing and having there's so many times I'll be teaching a class and have those light bulb moments. I was like, that's what my coach meant.
Exactly, totally. And you wouldn't, a lot of times they can tell you till they're blue in the face and you'll never get it until you get it. You
Yeah.
know, you're in MMA, you're on your mat, you're doing whatever, it's angles, right? All different angles and all these split seconds of timing. So that's all math. It's just all these equations. You start learning how to get to there. Now you start to feel and you start being able to recognize those angles, those timings, able to, you know, to make a stutter step this way to get him to step this way. And then you can move. Which I love about jujitsu is that you go from a great jujitsu artist will go from one move, and if he doesn't get that ankle lock, well, that's right into a knee bar, and it's right into something else, right? And it's constant. Like I see these guys, and I'm like, man, it's all of these. They're going one that didn't work, and there's a wrist, oh, there's a neck, I mean, it's just constant, like little spiders all over you, man, because they're not trying to set those things up all the time. It's there and they can recognize it. That's okay. There's your next one. That didn't work. There's your next one. Here's, you know, and your next submission. I love that.
Yeah.
The way that I see, for example, jujitsu is kind of like, now I see the connection between jujitsu and like professional wrestlings. Like you're connecting the dots, right? You're finding opportunities within the match, you know, for that opening, for that like big aha. You're not taking too much time on the big, what do you call them? Like when it's the big plats and then it's like, it's just like you're taking your time, but you're connecting everything. It's like when it comes to like a jiu-jitsu match, the way that I look at it is, okay, like you're gonna find that opening and then like if you get it, you're just gonna get it right there and then. But when it comes to like professional wrestling, there's just so many things to connect. I'm still like struggling trying to figure that out, you know. And when I saw you watch the guys wrestle in front of you, you will like stop them in the middle of something that I would have never guessed. Like, why you stop them? You know, in my head. But then you stop them and you're like, wait, you're going too fast. And I'm just like, whoa, I didn't see that. But it's just again,
Just being able to recognize things. It comes with experience.
yeah.
It just comes with experience. You start to be able to recognize things. It's like speaking a language. It's like a sixth sense almost. It's like, you know, there's a lot of, let's say, like an X-ray or a radio wave. It's always been there. We
Yeah.
just never were able to see it. Now with, you know, when radio was invented, you can all of a sudden you can, wait a minute, we can broadcast over airwaves that we didn't even know those airwaves were there. And there's so many other things that are there that we have no clue about. It's just finding out where these are, and then, like I said, connecting dots and being able just to recognize this stuff, you know. Red light's another thing in space that we never even really knew was there. And now we can see it. And it's like, oh, well, that open up this whole new spectrum of stuff. There's so much more things out there that we don't know about. Once we recognize them, it'll open up even more. It's like
when do you think, for as far as yourself, when do you think your brain started like with that third eye, right? When do you think in your time, like in your life throughout your wrestling career, when do you think that started happening to you? You started seeing things from a different perspective.
Maybe like 8, 10 years in,
Okay.
but I kind of really the little glimpses of it. I had
Mhm.
some really, really good teachers, not just my family, but just, some of the best in the business. So, um, like I always say in my seminars, the way I teach you, it's not right and it's not wrong. It's the way I was learning this, what works for me. Somebody else can teach you something else, and that what's work for them. Somebody else can teach you something else that's going to work for them. But eventually you'll take a little bit of everybody and kind of make your own way, your own path. So I think just from experience and being taught all different things, I started making my own path and started recognizing different things. And it just was, it's a slow process, but it's slow, but until it's not slow. It's slow and then it goes really fast. I read this book called the Thin Line. So the principle of it is if we want to be comfortable in the future, we need to be uncomfortable right now. Meaning, if I want to be comfortable in the future, I got to get off this couch. This couch is pretty comfortable, but I got to get off of this couch and I got to go pound that pavement. Whatever it is, I got to go hustle, right? Whatever I'm doing, whether it be your jujitsu class or you got to, go on auditions or whatever it is, you got to do something to make yourself uncomfortable now, make yourself comfortable in the future. Now, I can make myself comfortable now by sitting on this couch, but in the future, I'll probably be uncomfortable because I won't have any money. I'll be sitting here I'll be a good couch potato, but I'm not proactive. Now, it doesn't happen overnight. I don't get off the couch and all of a sudden I'm a millionaire or I'm a jujitsu technician or whatever. It's slow process, but it's slow and then it goes really fast. It's the same the other way. When I'm on the couch, I'm not going to be broke tomorrow. But if I keep doing it, it's going to start and all of a sudden slow. So then you have nothing really fast. So that's the same thing with kind of learning. It's the same thing. It's a slow process. And there's an aha moment, like, oh, it doesn't mean that you know everything. You just start really like your brain opens up and you're starting to learn and your learning process goes, it's like a little kid. A little kid doesn't learn to walk one day and all of a sudden he's running a marathon. It's a slow process, but they start like a sponge and they start like obtaining, being able to absorb more and more and more and more and more and more. Before you know it, this kid that you thought really was just couldn't read, and all of a sudden he's reading stuff at the airport. I remember when my youngest son was like, we're in Hawaii, and he looks up and he goes, luggage, and I went, what? How old are you? Tell him. He was like I wasn't even kindergarten yet. And I went, look, and I went to my wife. I said, hey, did you know our son can read? What? So we started asking him reading. He started reading stuff. It was like, how the heck did that happen? Like, I don't know where that came from. You're always reading somebody, but just they picked it up, and all of a sudden, before you know it, he's like, you know. So I think that just with that aha moment and learning that third eye, eventually you have an eye, and then it blinks once, and all of a sudden, then it can kind of start seeing. But just because it can see doesn't mean that it's open to the universe. It's got to learn how to see. Right? Does it make sense?
Yep,
Yeah.
makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
Next question.
Yeah, we don't want to take too much of your time. I just wanted to finish up one more time, thanking you again so much for doing this. Professional wrestling was my first love. I'm in MMA now.
And two.
I still love professional wrestling, and I just wanted to thank you and your entire family for not only the entertainment but the inspiration for Latinos, for us smaller guys to believe that we can do something. I didn't think anything in sports were in my path. I was never an athletic kid, because kind of what you said, I became that couch potato for all those years, and then I went to high school. They're like, you need to do an extracurricular activity. So I was like, tried out for basketball, silly me. It didn't work out very well. It was another learning experience. But wrestling was a no-cut sport, and that's how I ended up in amateur wrestling. And I went into the wrestling room thinking I was going to see a wrestling ring, and I just see all these mats, but I probably wouldn't have gotten into that room if I'd never watched professional wrestling, and my freshman wrestling coach is still one of my coaches to this day. So none of anything that I have now wouldn't be here without professional wrestling, and you and your entire family have been such a huge part in everything that I've been able to do with my life. So I just wanted to one more time thank you for being here and for being an inspiration for the past 25 years of my life.
Absolutely, man. And touching on what you said, it's like you were a warrior and you didn't know you were a warrior. It was inside of you. You had to unlock it. And once you unlocked it a little bit, right? It wasn't like all of a sudden like, oh, I'm a warrior, and start kicking everybody's asses. Then it was like, wait a minute, boom. Like I kind of like getting punched. I don't mind. I don't
It's
mind,
like you were there.
right. It's like that you open this up and it's like, oh, like when you realize you were, I had to do it. They had to blossom in me as well. When I realized like, wow, I'm actually like, didn't like confrontation as a kid. I didn't like it. It was too like, I'd get too, like, my emotions would go too much, and I would, like start crying. Like I didn't know how to handle it. And then when you realize, wait a minute, it's not that bad. I'm not a bad fighter. Hey, this is all right. This is good. And then you realize that warrior starts opening up in you. It's like that fire starts coming up and just burns. It's like you throw more fire on it, more wood on it. It starts burning more, and that wood is being in that jiu-jitsu class, getting beat up more, working with people that are harder than you, that are tougher than you, that are kicking your ass. And eventually you start saying, I'm tired of getting my ass kicked. I'm going to start kicking people's asses, and it just festers from there. It's just more wood in the fire. But it's the same thing that we're talking about with anything. It's little by little. It's just like it's slow, but eventually, right?
As
But
far as for me, thank you again, because I'm big on mindset, and that's part of that's why when we talked to you for the first time and then I saw your seminar, I'm like, wow, like this individual here gets it. It's not too often where you see someone that gets what we do, right? And then you can live it in your life, and then you can show it and then teach it to others. So I really, really appreciate, because I think it inspires me even more to be an asshole.
love it. I love it.
Yeah, no, in a good way. He was there when I first started MMA, and he's always been my coach ever since. I'm loyal to him, and his teachings, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But because of him, I was introduced to you and this whole professional wrestling life, and I feel really blessed. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, you guys. It's been a pleasure talking to y'all. And when I finally had a podcast, I'm like, yeah, and I don't do a whole bunch of them. So I jump on. I was like, you guys are my people. So let's do it. It was always cool. Just practice, right? Love it. I love it. I just cool chopping it up with y'all for
Thank
real.
you so much.
Thank you so much, Chavo. You want to let everybody know where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, come check me out on my Instagram at Chavo Guerrero Jr. That's pretty much everything there. My Twitter is at Mex Warrior. And then on my Facebook, it's Chavo Guerrero Jr. There's a fake one out there, so be careful. Mine's got like 30,000 followers or whatever that. But there's another fake one out there. So just be careful. I never sell anything on Facebook. And so if somebody's trying to sell you something, that's not me. Yeah, but it's the same thing on on Instagram. Is pretty much, you can find everything I'm doing. I pretty much blast it on there, and showing you how awesome your life is when it's really not that awesome. And like all your Instagram, you're always like, oh, look how this guy's amazing. He's going to Europe and he's doing this. And he's doing champagne. This guy's got the best life. When really I'm like on the couch, all like, right. But yeah, so you can find me on there. So hey guys, again, thanks again. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Chavo.
All righty.
Absolutely.
Let's talk
God bless you
soon.
guys. See you soon.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.